Okay, so get ready for a serious plot twist here. Remember all those catchy TikTok dances and trends? Well, as of today, January 19th, 2025, they're officially a thing of the past in the US.
Yep.
TikTok is banned.
It's a landmark decision,
Yeah.
and one that raises some really interesting questions uh, about the future of social media, not just in the U.S., but globally.
And that's why we're doing this deep dive today, to kind of go beyond the headlines
Yeah.
and explore the journey of TikTok from its surprising beginnings to its meteoric rise and ultimately its controversial downfall.
It's a fascinating story. It really highlights the complex intersection of technology, global politics,
Hmm.
and this ever-evolving world of social media.
Right, and our guide for this deep dive is an Associated Press article titled TikTok Ban, a timeline of the app's history. Now, you might be thinking, didn't we already hear this story? But trust me, we're going deeper than the surface level news here. To understand how an app for silly dance videos became a national security concern.
And to really grasp the story, we need to go back to 2012, long before TikTok became a household name.
So before all the dance crazes, TikTok's parent company ByteDance was actually in a completely different line of business. Tell me more about that.
Well, ByteDance started in China, focusing on news aggregation. Their first big hit was Tuqiao, a personalized news aggregator. So imagine a news feed curated just for you, based on your interests. It was a huge success in China.
Wow, from news feeds to viral dance challenges, that's quite a leap. When did the shift to short-form video content begin?
The seeds were sown in 2014 with the emergence of Musical.ly, a separate app that focused on lip-syncing videos. This is where we start to see the format that would eventually define TikTok, short, catchy videos, designed for sharing and virality.
So Musical.ly was like the prototype for TikTok.
Yeah.
And then the two merged.
Exactly. In 2017, ByteDance acquired Musical.ly and merged it with their existing TikTok app. This merger was a game changer, combining Musical.ly's established user base with TikTok's sophisticated algorithm.
Okay, here's where I think it gets really interesting. Tell me more about this algorithm. What made it so uniquely addictive, especially for younger users?
TikTok's algorithm is a marvel of engineering, designed to keep users hooked. Unlike other platforms that rely on your existing social connections, TikTok's For You page serves up a continuous stream of content tailored to your individual viewing habits. The more you watch, the more the algorithm learns about your preferences, and the more addictive it becomes.
So it's like a digital slot machine, constantly feeding you content it thinks you'll love, making it almost impossible to stop scrolling. No wonder it became so popular, especially with teens, who practically live on their phones.
That's a great analogy.
Mhm.
And this addictive nature played a key role in TikTok's meteoric rise. It wasn't just an app. It became a cultural phenomenon, influencing everything from music and fashion to language and
Yeah.
humor.
And you can't talk about TikTok's cultural impact without mentioning Lil Nas X. In 2019, his song Old Town Road went from a TikTok sensation to topping the Billboard charts, breaking records along the way. That must have been a pivotal moment, showcasing TikTok's power to shape mainstream culture and disrupt the music industry.
Absolutely. It demonstrated TikTok's ability to catapult artists to fame in ways never seen before. But even as TikTok was riding this wave of success, there were whispers of concern, early warning signs that something wasn't quite right.
You mean beyond the fact that I could never quite master the Renegade?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
As early as September 2019, reports started emerging about TikTok censoring content that was deemed sensitive to the Chinese government. The Washington Post, for example, highlighted the curious absence of content related to the Hong Kong democracy protests on TikTok, a stark contrast to other social media platforms, where these protests were widely discussed.
So even during its rise to global fame, there were already questions about TikTok's connection to the Chinese government and its potential influence on the content users were seeing.
Precisely. And those concerns were amplified by The Guardian's publication of leaked internal documents. These documents alleged that TikTok moderators were instructed to suppress videos about topics like the Tiananmen Square protests and Tibetan independence.
That raises some serious questions about censorship and freedom of expression. Did these reports have any immediate impact on TikTok's popularity or the way it was perceived?
While the reports did generate some negative press, they didn't significantly impact TikTok's growth at the time. The app continued to gain users at an astonishing rate. However, these reports laid the groundwork for the larger controversy that would unfold in the coming years.
And it wasn't just media outlets raising red flags. Even the Pentagon got involved, right?
Yes, in late 2019, the Pentagon recommended that U.S. military personnel delete TikTok from their phones due to security concerns. This was a significant development, indicating that the U.S. government was becoming increasingly wary of TikTok's potential for data collection and its links to China.
That's a pretty big deal. So by the end of 2019, even as TikTok was reaching peak popularity, the seeds of doubt had been sown. What happened next? Did things just escalate from there?
They did. And 2020 brought a whole new level of drama to the TikTok saga. This is when we see the U.S. government taking more aggressive action, with attempts to ban the app altogether.
Yeah.
But we'll delve into that chapter after a quick break.
All right, sounds good. All right, so we left off with TikTok facing growing scrutiny, and even the Pentagon recommending U.S. military personnel delete the app. Things were definitely heating up. What happened next in this high-stakes game of app versus government?
Well, 2020 was a pivotal year for TikTok. This is when former President Trump entered the scene and really turned up the heat. He issued a series of executive orders specifically targeting TikTok.
Okay, what exactly was Trump trying to achieve with these executive orders?
His main goal was to address what he perceived as a national security threat posed by TikTok. The executive orders aimed to either force ByteDance to sell its U.S. operations to an American company or face a complete ban in the United States.
Wow, talk about high stakes. This must have been a pretty chaotic time for TikTok, its users, and even the tech world in general.
It was definitely a period of intense uncertainty and legal battles. There were failed acquisition attempts by Microsoft and a proposed partnership between Oracle and Walmart. That ultimately fell through. The future of TikTok in the U.S. was hanging in the balance.
So it was like a real-life tech thriller playing out on the world stage. But then the 2020 election happened. And with Biden's victory, things seemed to take a pause. Did the Biden administration soften its stance on TikTok?
Initially, yes. The legal battles surrounding TikTok were put on hold as the Biden administration reviewed the situation. However, the underlying concerns about national security, data privacy, and potential Chinese influence didn't just disappear.
So it was more of a temporary ceasefire than a complete change of heart.
Exactly. The tension was still there, simmering beneath the surface. And that brings us to January 2025, when the Supreme Court delivered its final verdict, upholding the ban. This decision sided with the argument that the potential national security risks posed by TikTok outweighed concerns about freedom of speech.
So even with the change in administration, the concerns about TikTok persisted and ultimately led to the Supreme Court upholding the ban. That really highlights the depth of the issue here. What were those specific national security concerns that everyone kept referring to?
At the heart of the issue was data security and the fear that the Chinese government could potentially access the vast amount of data TikTok collects on its users. Remember, TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is based in China. And under Chinese law, companies can be compelled to share data with the government.
Right. And TikTok had amassed a huge user base, collecting information about their demographics, browsing history, location data, even facial recognition data. This must have raised some serious alarm bells.
It did. U.S. officials were worried that this data could be used for various purposes, ranging from targeted propaganda and misinformation campaigns to more serious threats like espionage or tracking individuals.
So the concern wasn't necessarily that TikTok was actively spying on users, but that the potential for data access by the Chinese government created an unacceptable risk, especially considering the already strained relationship between the U.S. and China.
Precisely. And to make things worse, there were actual reports of ByteDance employees accessing U.S. user data. In 2022, BuzzFeed News published a report based on leaked audio recordings of internal TikTok meetings. These recordings suggested that ByteDance employees in China had repeatedly accessed non-public data of U.S. TikTok users.
This must have been a major blow to TikTok's credibility. Did they attempt to deny these allegations?
They didn't directly deny the allegations, but their responses were vague and focused on emphasizing their commitment to data security. However, these reports, combined with statements from U.S. officials like FBI Director Christopher Wray, who explicitly warned about the risks of Chinese authorities manipulating TikTok's algorithm, further fueled the push for a ban.
It sounds like a perfect storm of events. The data security concerns the strained U.S.-China relations and these reports of data access. All of this converging to make a ban seem almost inevitable. But did TikTok just sit back and accept this fate? Didn't they try to fight back, or at least negotiate some kind of compromise?
They did. TikTok launched a charm offensive, highlighting the steps they were taking to address security concerns. They emphasized their plan to migrate U.S. user data to servers managed by Oracle, a U.S. tech company. They also brought in a new CEO, Shou Zi Chew, who testified before Congress in an attempt to reassure lawmakers The TikTok was committed to protecting U.S. user data.
So they tried to demonstrate their commitment to U.S. user privacy and distance themselves from potential Chinese government influence. Did these efforts gain any traction?
They did have some supporters. Some argued that the security risks were overblown and that a ban would set a dangerous precedent, potentially stifling innovation and free speech. They pointed out that other social media companies also collect vast amounts of user data and raise concerns about government overreach in regulating online platforms.
It seems like there were valid points on both sides of the argument, but ultimately national security concerns prevailed.
Yes, in the end, the U.S. government deemed the risks posed by TikTok too great to ignore. They argued that the potential for data access by a foreign adversary, particularly one with a history of censorship and human rights violations, was simply unacceptable. Despite TikTok's efforts, bipartisan support for a ban grew, and President Biden eventually signed the legislation into law in April 2024.
Even with legal challenges and attempts to find a buyer for TikTok's U.S. operations, the Supreme Court ultimately upheld the ban. So after years of controversy, debate, and legal battles, TikTok's fate in the U.S. was sealed.
It was a landmark decision with far-reaching implications. The TikTok saga has raised fundamental questions about the role of technology in society, the balance between national security and individual liberties, and the future of social media in an increasingly interconnected and complex world.
But even though the story of TikTok's presence in the U.S. might be over, the ban itself created a whole new set of consequences and questions. What actually happened on January 19th, 2025, when the ban went into effect? What did the digital landscape look like after TikTok went dark? So we've talked about the why of the TikTok ban, but I'm really curious about the how. What actually happened? On January 19th, 2025, when the ban took effect, I imagine it wasn't as simple as flipping a switch and shutting down the app.
Yeah, you're right. It was a multi-pronged approach with technical and social implications. Leading up to the ban, there was a flurry of activity. As users scrambled to download their content, find alternative platforms, and basically say goodbye to this app that had become such a huge part of their lives.
It must have felt like a digital earthquake, especially for younger users who practically grew up with TikTok. Did everyone just migrate to Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts?
There was definitely a surge in activity on those platforms.
Yeah.
But it's too early to say if any single one has become the new TikTok. Some users are exploring newer platforms like Triller and Clapper. Others are even hoping for a revival of Vine. Remember Vine?
Oh, yeah, 6-second loops. It's amazing to think that in this whole saga, we've come full circle. Back to the era of Vine. It really shows how unpredictable the social media landscape can be. But how did the actual shutdown work? Was it like a digital curtain falling on TikTok?
It was pretty dramatic. First, TikTok was removed from app stores, so no downloads. Then existing users in the U.S. started receiving messages that the app was no longer available.
So even if you already had the app, you couldn't use it anymore. That's wild.
Right. TikTok also disabled video uploads and live streams for U.S. users. So no new content. The website was also blocked for U.S. users.
Wow. A complete blackout. No app, no website, no new content. It's almost like a digital ghost town where all the viral dances just stopped mid-move. It must have been a strange day for everyone involved, from casual users to major influencers. What's the impact been like so far?
There's a sense of loss, especially for content creators who had built their careers on TikTok. Many are trying to rebuild their audiences on other platforms.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge. Some are optimistic, but others are understandably anxious about what's next.
It's a reminder that the digital landscape can shift rapidly, and even the most popular platforms aren't invincible. What lessons can we learn from all of this?
Well, the TikTok ban highlights some crucial issues in the digital age. It shows the tension between national security and individual liberties, the complexities of data privacy in a globalized world, and the power dynamics between governments and tech giants.
It's like a case study in the challenges and questions we'll continue facing as technology advances. What are your thoughts on the long-term implications of this ban? What precedents has it set?
It definitely sets a precedent for governments to take action against foreign-owned tech companies if they're perceived as national security threats. It raises questions about potential future bans or increased scrutiny on companies based in countries that the U.S. considers adversarial.
It's a sobering thought. What about freedom of expression? Could this ban lead to a slippery slope of online censorship?
That's a valid concern. The TikTok ban has ignited debates about where to draw the line between national security and freedom of expression in the digital age. These are complex issues that we'll be grappling with for years to come.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from TikTok's surprising beginnings to its explosive popularity, its controversial entanglements with data privacy, and finally, its dramatic exit from the U.S. digital stage. It's a story that shows how quickly technology can change the world and how important it is to understand the forces at play.
The story of TikTok, even in its absence, will continue to shape conversations about technology privacy and the future of social media.
And that's exactly what we aim to do with these deep dives, to equip you with the knowledge and insights to navigate this ever-evolving digital world. Thanks for joining us today.